Welcome to Town Talk, the official podcast of Summerville, South Carolina, where we bring you the latest news and incredible guests here in Summerville. And today, I'm super stoked to bring back Thomas McNeal, who is the Director of Emergency Management for Dorchester County. Yes. We had a conversation a while back in the podcast, sir, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Dorchester County.
For now, right?
For now.
It's been crazy these last couple of days with the storms we've had. I mean,
yeah.
We were just talking about it offline, but you had the one, it was like 15 minutes, and before you know, you see trees down and everything like that.
Right.
I mean, that's just crazy.
It's that time of year where these little pop-up thunderstorms just, they form and are big immediately.
Yeah.
And rain their havoc and are gone just as quickly.
It's insane. What was it? Monday, we had our standing committee meetings, and before the meeting, I went to go grab coffee at one of our local coffee shops down the street. Won't name a name because I love them all. But I went to one down the street, and I was just sitting in there. I walked over there, and I was like, all right, I'll be able to walk back. No big deal. 5 minutes, it's pouring. Right. I'm like, oh no, I don't know what I'm about to do here. Came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So it's crazy how that works. But we'll dig into the fun stuff like that in a second. But Thomas, can you just, for anyone who maybe did not hear our first episode to get to know about you, can you give us a little background on you, how you came to Dorchester County, and what you do for Dorchester County?
All right. So I'm the Director of Emergency Management here in Dorchester County, which covers all the municipalities to include Summerville. Mm-hmm. I like to tell people there's lots of police leadership and fire chiefs, and I said, but there's one emergency manager for the whole county, and it's me, which means I am the emergency manager for the different municipal leaders, just like Summerville. So it's a good position to be in, to be able to help everyone, right? All of our citizens. How did I get started in this? So I was in the Army and married my first wife, who was also in the Army, and ended up moving to her hometown of Topeka, Kansas. I had grown up in Maryland, and I ended up on the Topeka Police Department as a police officer. And I got deployed as part of a law enforcement strike team out of the state of Kansas during Hurricane Katrina to the state of Mississippi. And I ended up working for 17 days in a little town of Pass Christian, Mississippi, which is right on Bay St. Louis. And it was pretty much wiped off the face of the planet by the giant storm surge. Everybody thinks of New Orleans, but New Orleans was a flood because levees failed. The actual storm surge hit the Bay St. Louis, Pass Christian area and leveled those two towns. Yeah. And so I caught the bug. Everybody in emergency management who's, especially older, there's no one started in emergency management.
Yeah.
You found your way into it. And I caught the bug. And I was a SWAT team guy and all that. And
so it just came out of nowhere.
It was a life-changing experience. People talk about that. I had one.
Yeah.
I fell in love with emergency management, and I didn't like seeing the things that were broken and I couldn't fix them. Yeah. Because I was driving with a partner around in a police car patrolling what was left of a town.
Yeah.
I wanted to get into the command structure. So fast forward, state of Kansas realizes, hey, we're pretty good at disasters, because most people call it disasters. We called it seasons.
Yeah.
Right? Tornadoes, floods.
Yeah.
Everything.
A Kansas thing.
It's Kansas, right? So the state formed a statewide incident management team. I was one of the original members. So then I started to deploy as part of an incident command team to help run disasters.
Yeah.
Fell in love even more. Ended up divorced, second marriage. My wife's a scientist. We moved back to Maryland for me, so we could pursue her science degree, career. And I made the switch then full time to emergency management. I worked my way up through the ranks at the Howard County Emergency Management Office, and just really it became who I am.
Yeah,
right? It was a
your
complete
identity.
It is, and left there. Got to do some really interesting stuff while I was there. Left there, went to the school system for a few years, doing emergency management, security, and risk management for the Howard County Public School System, which is a giant school system in Maryland. And then really wanted to get back to the local emergency management level. And my parents and my brother had moved down to South Carolina in years past, So I put a bullseye around South Carolina
There
while
it
I was
is,
looking for a job, and Dorchester County position opened up. I applied, and the rest is
history, right? Yeah.
Love it, absolutely love it here. I've been here 3.5 years now.
Yeah,
in this role.
You started a little bit before I started here, actually. Yeah, so we've kind of been along the ride together in this area.
Absolutely love the region. Love Dorchester County. Love Somerville. It is home. So we have integrated in the community well. And it's one of the nice things about working here as an emergency manager is that it's hurricane country, not from the standpoint of I'll be busy, but from the standpoint that people understand disasters a little bit better. Our political elected folks are, different senior leadership at all the different agencies, police, fire, sheriff's department, they get it at a higher level, and it makes my life easier because I'm not fighting with them. I'm able to coordinate them. And that's really beneficial to
Is that rare?
us. It's super rare. Super rare. I tell people all the time, this is the first job I've ever had where I didn't have to explain to my boss what I do.
Yeah. They understand.
They know what I do.
Yeah.
And that's, regardless even of whatever political stuff might be going on with other pieces of, government. On game day, they all show up and put that stuff in the pocket. We'll fight about something else later. Right. They all show up, and our elected officials, they all show up, and they know they've been briefed, and they listen, and they know what to do, and they know how to effectively allow me to do the coordination piece between all the different key stakeholders, private sector, public. And it really helps our citizens. And I hope, people hear that. That this is rare, how good it is here for us, and the level of coordination that occurs, and the level of buy-in at all ranks,
and community
and community buy-in. People want to help. I tell people all the time, I'm never leaving. I will finish my career here.
I say the same thing. I say the same thing. I'm young. And I'm young. I still got, I was just talking to someone like 32 years until I'm able to retire. I'm like, well, I found my spot. So here I am for the next 30 something years here in Somerville. You know what I'm saying? That's right. This community in this region, like you said, it's amazing. And the people out here are amazing. Especially with your experience, you've seen different communities, different leaderships, and you saying something like that, it should tell our community, our listeners and watchers, like, listen, we have it here. We have it here, right? I tell people this all the time.
Because a disaster is a disaster, right? I tell people all the time, they call it that for a reason. It's a disaster. But we don't want to be the disaster as well, right?
That's actually a really good point.
How do you, if you have competent plans and leadership and good coordination and a whole lot of care, you're able to work through a disaster much quicker. Right. And that's and more fiscally responsible, and all those pieces that you hear the horror stories elsewhere, and they want to do the blame game with everybody. Oh, it's FEMA's fault, it's this fault, but it starts at the local level. All disasters are managed at the local level. So the buck stops with me. And that's but luckily I have the support here. The structure is built that I don't have to worry about that. I just have to mess with the disaster. And there's so many different type of disasters that could happen. I don't want to become a fear podcast, so we're not going to go down that list, though both our community and us know all the different things that could potentially be a disaster. But one that we are in is hurricane season. This is probably you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the biggest pushes you have in your role is the hurricane season, right? And so we are in it. You guys just had your expo, which looked like an awesome success. You want to talk a little bit about that? Oh, yeah. Our annual Hurricane Expo at Ashley River Park has become one of the biggest events in the county. And it's a wonderful event where we bring in emergency services folks from the county, from the town was there. We bring in a lot of different offices within government, state government, National Weather Service was there. That's cool. And then we even bring in some outside folks who offer services or products, for disasters.
Yeah,
and
like
it's a big
kits
family
or something like that.
Yeah, big family fun day. They got
that.
because we partner with our Parks and Recreation to run it, and so they're great at the what are the kids going to do while parents talk.
Yeah,
and because we're growing so fast here in all the Low Country, but especially in Dorchester County, that a lot of folks moving in are brand new to living in hurricane country. They've come from parts of the Midwest and whatnot, and so
up north.
Yeah, so we find that people are oblivious to it or terrified, and we'd like them be in the middle somewhere and get the true information. So that's what we provide at the expo. It's just a wonderful event, and it's a lot of fun, and it's it's a good way to kick off hurricane season. Is to make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide the public with the information they need in a one-stop shop. And and they freak out a little bit when they realize, like, oh, you're the actual National Weather Service is sitting here, and I can talk to you about storms. And it's great.
How many years has it been now with that?
They've been doing it for like 13 years. This is the third year at Ashley River Park since it opened. Before that, it was in the parking lot of a hardware store. Perfect location,
though.
It's wonderful.
I love that. I know it's not within the town, but it is an awesome
town adjacent
park. Yeah, it's town adjacent. It's in our county, one of our counties, one of our 3 counties. No, but I think it was a great. I wasn't out there myself. I was planning on going out there, but got caught up. But the town representatives were out there, and just from some community members I've talked to on a daily basis, it was an incredible event. And so shout out to you and your team in the county for putting on something so good for the community to be able to be prepared, get educated. And you're right, there's a lot of people that come into I guess the Low Country and have no idea what to expect when it comes to a hurricane, right? It's the same thing. I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, and it's the same thing. People traveled up there. They have no idea what it's like to live on 1 foot of snow on a daily basis for 6 months. Right. And so it's these different aspects. But a lot of people are terrified. And and you're right. It's finding that middle ground, right, between terrified and oblivious. Because we want people to be alert and want people to prepare. We don't want people to not prepare.
That's right.
Because then when you're not prepared, that's when things can go hectic, right? To that point, last time we talked, we were in y'all's new facility and we talked about that. But where we sit today, with hurricane season now here, what are y'all doing to get prepared, get ready? We've, like you said, we talked about earlier, we've already had a couple like little practice storms come through, right? What are you guys up to right now to prepare for what could potentially come?
So at the end of last season, as every season, we go back and look at all of our activations of the Emergency Operations Center, and we look at all the different storms we had to deal with, and we study them, right? And we find we do that after action review.
It's important.
And then we find where can we do things better? What's working? What's the best practice that we can share with others? What do we need to work on? And we work on those plans to update them. And then training never stops. So then it's more training and more initiatives. What can we do differently? Later in this month, we'll have our annual pre-hurricane season EOC exercise, which is a big event for us. It's a full-scale exercise. We bring in volunteers who act as a simulation cell, so the phones are ringing the whole time, and they have scripts to read, and it's a great way for us to just knock the cobwebs off too and warm up a little bit. And we test things, and a lot of times we try to test the things that are new or things that we know we could have done better. We test those aspects of the emergency operations plan a little bit harder. We tailor, what's happening in our disaster to force us to work on those problems and see how it goes. And if we have lessons learned from there, those also go into the plans. We're not afraid to rewrite a plan. Very quickly to make it better. So, and then, of course, the public outreach and all that. But we have a few new initiatives that we're doing that are that are going to be pretty good. So one of the things last year was Hurricane Helene really impacted the upstate. And one of the, my team deployed to Pickens County, and we helped out in their emergency operations center. One of the big lessons learned up there was the amount of trees that came down. And from crazy. That, the blowdown was huge, right? Neighborhoods were trapped for days or even a week or more. Couldn't get to them. There weren't enough chainsaws to go around, to the point where they were bringing in National Guard from out of state, giving them impromptu training on how to run chainsaws, and then setting them loose to help open roads. And I said, well, we got to do better than that. So we just received notification from Duke Energy. We received one of the Duke Energy emergency management grants.
Love that.
We're going to be buying chainsaws and chaps and helmets.
Love that.
We got an old trailer from our facilities department to haul the gear in. And we're going to provide training to all county staff who are physically able and want to learn how to run chainsaws, so we can form cut and toss teams.
I love that.
To be able to open roads even faster. That the trailer and equipment will remain with our Parks and Rec folks, because they'll be able to use it on a daily basis within the parks as they need, which will keep the saws alive so they don't gum up and all that. And then even on these last few nights where we had these, thunderstorms.
There's a lot of trees that fell down the other night.
It'll give us the opportunity for our sheriff's deputies to go check out a saw and chaps and be able to throw it in the trunk, and if necessary, quickly open roads. So they're not waiting on public works or state highways to come cut up a branch to get it off the road because it's too big to just pull off the road. You got to cut it up. So we're trying to think of ways to be faster and to solve some of our own problems. Another great initiative we're working on right now, it's in its infancy, but we're working with the faith-based community to as many churches and congregations as there are here in Dorchester County. There's no reason that we don't have a sizable force that can be put in play in a post-disaster world, or even helping our emergency services folks in immediacy. I was speaking with the fire chief for the county earlier about, if we had a house that had some fire damage and needed a couple windows boarded up, but they don't have the means or they don't have the insurance to cover that. Who can come help them board up their window in the middle of the night? Well, we know throughout our entire faith-based community here, there's a couple of dudes you could call at 2 a.m. who'd be happy to roll out and board up a window. So it's things like that. It's thinking through, how can the community help itself? Because we always find in a post-disaster environment that people want to help, and but they don't know how to help, and I don't know who they are.
And they don't want to overstep either, right? That's the other thing, is
or they do overstep and they're in the way. Now you're in the way. You're not where I need you to be. I don't even know who you are.
So good guidance.
Right.
For
so how do we,
folks who want to help?
How do we do that ahead of time? How do we build out these programs? Our CERT program, the Community Emergency Response Training we offer. We're expanding that program so that they're not just a catch and release back to your own neighborhood program, that we're going to be bringing in training on how to run a point of distribution, how to run a staging area. How can I add manpower from the community that is pre-vetted and trained to do these roles, to help our staff to do these roles, so that the community can help themselves. And that's what the community wants to be able to do. Because if your house is fine, right, you're fine, right? How do you help? Because the neighborhood down the road, they got clobbered. How do we help? Do you need help in the shelters? Do you need help with points of distribution, hand out food and water? Do people need help tarping their roofs? There's a lot of stuff that can be done that we can engage the public properly to form it. So we're going to be working extensively here in short order with the faith-based community.
I love that.
So that we can, get them all involved. Because we also find, there's a lot of churches who don't necessarily want to take on a single mission as their own, right? They're afraid of failure, right? They don't want to promise too much and then not be able to pull it off. But if you combine all the different congregations, and we found a church group who's willing to take on the management aspect of it, the behind the scenes, so we have a one-stop call to them, and they can engage the greater faith-based community to say, here's the missions. Here's what they need. Who can help? Love that. And put those teams together. And I'm really pleased with, because so far as those folks have been engaging churches, they haven't talked to all of them yet. So if you're a church leader, stand by. They're coming. But that no one has said no. And they all love the idea because you'll run it. I don't have to run it. I can just put it before my congregation and we know we have people who will help. Mm-hmm. And it gives me the opportunity then to say yes when they want to help, because we know who they are and they've had some training, and it's those type of engagements are, next level when it comes to local emergency management.
Agree.
To pre-build these things, and
agree.
It's going to be fun.
It's really impressive. Yeah. Kind of listening to you, and what I'm thinking is like, the innovation and what you guys are doing, right? Think, all right, let's take a look and see what was our weakness here. What's something we could have done better? Right. And taking that and innovating and getting better. Right. Rather than just being complacent. Yeah. And I've seen that, not locally. Well, I think we're pretty good here, even outside of our little region. I think, other parts of the low country and stuff like that. I've seen it, and we've been pretty good. But I've also seen a lot of counties and municipalities in different parts of the country who just are very complacent. Yes. And it's sad, actually. It's sad. But it is. We are very fortunate for the people we have here in place, and leadership and elected officials. I mean, again, going back to how fortunate we really are, and trying to push that message to our community too, because it's true.
My biggest problem usually is I'm like, slow down, everybody. Mm-hmm. You're outrunning me. Good problem to have, though. It is a great problem to have. A good problem. Yeah, everyone's trying to help too much. I need calm down. It's a wonderful problem to have.
It really is. Now, I remember when Helene came through, I was actually traveling from, I was doing my Master Public Information Officer accreditation in Nashville. Mm-hmm. And I drove there, and I just finished up and I was driving back. And I remembered the storm coming through, and it hit everything. And I actually left and started driving while the storm was going through. Don't recommend doing. No. Probably shouldn't have admitted that, but I did. But it wasn't really bad.
You're one of them.
Yeah, I was one of them. Don't be mad at me, I promise. It wasn't really bad driving through. I wasn't actually through. I was on the edge. But I noticed something was weird when the route took me a completely different way. And I remember going through, where was it? I think I was near Augusta. Mm-hmm. Don't know how I ended up that way. Never really gone to Nashville that way, but I was near Augusta. And all of a sudden, lights were off everywhere. Right. Everywhere. And I remember just kind of looking around like, what is going on? And I lost phone signal for like 2 hours. Right. My maps weren't working, nothing. And I was stressed and I had no idea what to do. But I was still driving. I was using the old fashioned, looking at the signs, seeing, and then I started seeing trees everywhere. Right. And I'm like, whoa, like this is crazy. It looked apocalyptic, or whatever the word is.
That's the word.
Yeah. And it really did, though. Yeah. And for the people up in North Carolina and upstate South Carolina, who are really hit, I mean, they're still recovering.
Well, even look at the Table Rock fire from earlier this year. One of the major factors in that was the amount of trees that were blown down along the mountains.
Crazy how that works,
right? It's just fuel.
Yeah.
And it made it hard for the teams that normally walk in, or the bulldozer teams that cut the paths.
Because you can't.
Because the deadfall was so much. It was hard to get in and out and dangerous. And so it made it that much more challenging for them to fight that fire.
It was crazy. That was a storm that no one expected to be that crazy too.
No, they normally die by the time they get that far inland. Yeah,
no one expected it, and that's what I think was the hardest part too. Right. That's why you and your team and we all, me and everyone, prepare. No matter what, no matter where you're at, prepare. Right. But that's something you could prepare as much as you can. It might still be out of your control.
They call it a disaster for a reason.
Exactly.
Right? And what that helps me is if we can get all of our citizens to prepare their families, have a kit, be ready, then I'm not helping people who shouldn't need my help. Right? I can help the people like you had a kit, but your house is gone. So is your kit, right? I got to help you. I shouldn't have to help the people who have the means to prepare themselves and their family for a disaster, and then they didn't experience massive loss themselves.
They still have electricity, but they ran out of toilet paper.
Right.
And so you should have just bought a little extra toilet paper. Right. You know, I get what you're saying.
You're at the point of distribution for food and water, but your house still survived, and
you have electricity.
Why are you here?
Yeah.
You know? But I didn't go to the store. I didn't buy anything. I have nothing.
Stores are closed.
And now the stores are closed. Yeah. And I need, and there's always folks, families who don't have the means, right? They're living paycheck to paycheck. And if there's food in the cabinet, they're eating it.
Yep.
I need to help them, right? In a post-disaster world, I got to help them. But it does make it a little bit more challenging when, you're not helping, you're having to help folks who had the means to help themselves and survive the storm intact. And
we'll talk a little bit more about preparedness a little bit later in the episode. But we did, as we are approaching this hurricane season, what is the outlook looking like? Is it looking like it's going to be a little more active than usual?
Right.
What was it looking like right now?
So the NOAA, the National Hurricane Center, they put out their outlook every year, right? As does, Colorado State. And they say it will be a somewhat more active season than the norm, right? But what does that mean?
Yeah, tell us what that means.
So active means they expect there to be more named storms than usual. But it can be a very active season, but all the storms stay out to sea and never make landfall, right? Or it can be a really lower than average season, but it only takes one, right, to come ashore and cause mayhem, right? Yeah. So that's what we tell people. It only takes one, and there could be one named storm for the whole year. It could be one of those. I mean, that would be insane. But if it comes ashore here in Charleston, we get our butts kicked and
direct impact.
Right. So I tell people not to worry about, it's going to be active, not active. That doesn't matter. I mean, it's a numbers game. It's a dice game for us as far as, does it increase our odds?
Yeah.
And we know here in the Low Country, especially, we can get hurricane or tropical weather system impacts two ways, right? We, of course, have the Atlantic coast where we can have one come in from the Atlantic, come ashore like a Hugo back in the day. But we get a lot of them that come up through the panhandle of Florida across Georgia and exit through South Carolina.
We've seen that a lot lately,
we get that a lot, right? Yeah. So we always have to be aware of either side of the Florida, state of Florida. We can get those impacts from that storm either way. And a lot of times something like a tropical storm Debbie, where it's a tropical storm, right? It shouldn't be that bad, right? That's the way people's brains work sometimes. But we get a ton of rain and experience a ton of flooding from a tropical storm because they're moving slower and they're just raining on you. Now you don't have the high winds, but the impacts are different. And here where we are in Dorchester County, being slightly off the coast. Now we do have some areas that are tidal and can experience storm surge, but it would take a pretty big storm to push water up this far.
Downtown Charleston.
Right. It's not Folly Beach, right?
Yeah.
But what we have to deal with, and probably more so, is that inland flooding due to tropical storm level rainfall. That we live in swamp area, right? These dry swamps that all these communities are built in. And they know, right? We get these big torrential rains like we've had the last few days. And if you look out your back door and you back up to the woods and you see there's an inch or two of water all through the forest there. It's a dry swamp, right? But during Debbie, there were a lot of folks, that water was chest deep back behind their houses. And a lot of these new communities, they were freaking out a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they, you tell them, but until you see it, even myself, my own backyard had chest deep water. I was like, woof, good thing the house is up on a berm here,
Yeah.
That it's something to be reckoned with, and to truly just understand what are the threats that any tropical system can bring, and every time it's different.
And it's the same thing out here. I mean, in just comparison to like Charleston or Mount Pleasant versus us, they have more. I mean, flooding is a problem for all of us, but
Right.
we have a little bit more trees, and so there's
Yep.
you see a lot more tree damage out here too, compared to our partnering or our sister cities and counties, right? So it's weird, but the one thing I want you to touch base on, which I've seen through my years in GovComms, everyone, it's a Cat 1, no one cares.
Right.
It's a Cat 3 or above, everyone cares.
Right.
If it's a tropical storm, no one says anything, or it's saying it's going to be a Cat 3 and then it hits as a Cat 1 or a tropical storm, and everyone's like, that was a waste of, evacuate. Can you talk about that? Just the public perception of those numbers and how, I guess, some advice for some of our listeners and watchers and how to approach those, because I already feel like I know what your answer is going to be, but I definitely want you to just
it is a problem, right? Some of it's that complacency, and complacency kills. People who didn't think they needed to leave, or they think they know better, or I've lived here my whole life and it's never done this before. You always hear that in the after effect, right? Every
time.
I've lived here my whole life. It's never been this bad. Well, okay, it's a disaster.
I'm glad I didn't leave because, it wasn't as bad as everyone said it was going to be.
Right.
But
and people tend to measure the next hurricane off of the last one.
Exactly.
Regardless of size. Now you start saying 3 and above, it gets people's attention, right? And we tell people you hide from wind, you run from water, right? So storm surge or inland flooding, you want to get away from. But wind, outside of being along the direct coastline, you can probably, if your house is going to be dry, that might be a safe place to stay. Might, right? Now, if you're living in a structure like some of our trailer home communities and other places like that, if it's not strapped down, to hurricane grade stuff, it may not be safe for you to remain in there. You might need to evacuate from the wind. But that's stuff that people have to take notice of. And the National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center, they've done a good job over the last few years of changing the language within their watches and warnings.
I've noticed that.
To try to explain in clearer terms the level of danger that comes with the forecast prediction. This is what you could experience due to this.
A lot more detail.
And sometimes using some, scary language almost. And they're not trying to scare people. They're trying to open people's eyes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it might be very far-fetched, but if there's a potential of something happening to you, then it's better off protecting you, yourself, and your family, your pets, and everything in your home, even if it's not the case.
Well, you think about the watches and warnings that are issued by the National Weather Service. For it to reach criteria of a watch, which is it could happen, a warning is it's happening or seconds away.
Note that, because everyone gets that confused too.
It has to be able to do harm to you. It's deadly. Right. So I tell people all the time, if I'm the emergency manager, would you like me to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, by the way, watch out later today, it could be bad. Well, that's a watch. They're doing it for you already. Pay attention. And they're telling you could get hurt. You could die from this. Pay attention. Thunderstorms rolling in. It's going to be a big enough thunderstorm and bad enough lightning, wind, that it could cause someone great bodily harm or death. A warning is that thing we told you to watch out for is happening. They're tapping you on the shoulder and telling you could die here. Watch out. Make appropriate decisions.
Tornado warning. That means there's a tornado on the ground.
Right. That's it.
Yeah.
Or they're at least seeing the radar image of
a tornado forming.
Strong enough probability that they're hitting the go sign. And that's a really important thing. Like, the experts of all experts, and people like to bag on, meteorology is
they're like 50% right. 25%.
You get to keep your job. Everybody says that, right? But the reality, especially with our National Weather Service folks, they get graded on their forecast accuracy, and can lose their job if they aren't good enough. They are the best in the world at it. So we have the best in the world who are tapping you on the shoulder with that watcher warning, telling you, I'm the expert of all experts when it comes to weather in the world, and I'm warning you about something. Choose to listen if you want.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm sometimes astonished at people who, feel they know better, or, and I get it. I certainly dabble in weather in my career field, but I don't know more than them.
Yeah.
And that's who I lean on to talk about. That's whose information I share. It's their stuff. Listen to them.
The National Weather Service.
National Weather Service. Yeah. Listen to them. And I'll tell you here too, our local meteorologists that are on the TV stations here are fantastic, right? They're low country meteorologists.
Yeah,
they know the area, they know hurricanes, they know tropical storms, and they work with the National Weather Service and their local emergency managers. National Weather Service has an application on the Slack app, where it's just us. It's just emergency managers, TV meteorologists, National Weather Service people, and then some fire chiefs and folks like that who have a reason to be on there, where we're talking about the storms as they're happening, sharing information.
Yeah. Right. At real time.
Yeah.
Right. And being able to communicate that to who it needs to be communicated to as quick as possible.
I respect very much the quality, caliber, and experience of the meteorology folks here in this region, whether it's the TV meteorologists or the National Weather Service folks we have here. We're in good shape, so we should listen to them.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this brings up a good point and something that I am involved in, which is the communications aspect of it. When it comes to communicating to the community, or even just helping them prepare, y'all's digital media is fun. You have some humor to it. It's catchy, but at the same time, very informative. But when things get serious, you guys are very quick on that. And from the town's perspective, I usually follow suit with y'all, National Weather Service, because I know you guys follow suit with National Weather Service. So whatever one I see first or get information on first is usually the one I'm reporting on, just from the town's pages, right? But how important is the communication aspect, and how much effort do y'all put in on y'all's end to do that work, right? But also enhance it and innovate it. So, on a nice sunny day, not a lot of people really care about emergency management, right? We typically, in most people's eyes, it's something's going on. Oh, wait, I'm friends with them on Facebook. Let me see what they're saying about it. Well, how do I get those people engaged ahead of time? Yeah. So we try to be fun and creative. And it works. I think y'all are doing a great job. Yeah.
Our emergency management Facebook page has more followers than any other department in the county. And we're very proud of that. Yeah. But it's because we work really hard to be creative, to engage those folks, so that when we do have serious information to share, they're already getting it. They're already connected to us. And then we become the people they know. Much like your, TV meteorologist, everybody has a favorite, right? We want to be Dorchester County's favorite. Yeah. Go here. Now, when we activate the Emergency Operations Center, and our public information office takes over our account, so they're the ones behind the scenes managing it, because at that point we don't have time to do it ourselves, and they'll put me in front of a camera real quick and have me talk, and then I run back into a meeting. Yep. But the other thing behind that is how all of you that are involved in public information, you all become a team that, and it's technically called the Joint Information System, where it's a handshake agreement between all of you to help each other. Whether that is one location has a major issue and all the other public information officers are coming to help you, or you're going to help them because it's their day and they just need more of you to help take on the different missions within that sector. But the sharing of information, the being able to vet information you're hearing, to rumor control, all those pieces, I think that's important for people to understand. Like it's a system.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not going it alone, right? You have lots of sources and you have people to rely on who you can ask a question to or feeding you information directly.
Yeah.
So that we're all speaking with one voice. And that's really important. We don't want people to get conflicting information. We want people to hear the truth. We want people to make sure that, we do our best to make sure that people have confidence in us as we're managing a disaster, that, we know what we're doing.
It's true.
Big.
I mean, we did, it's quick and accurate information that does not conflict with one another. And that means from the town, from the county, and the county works with other towns, right? So
the state and federal and
state, and then school districts, right? That's another thing,
right?
All of us working together, and there's so many different avenues. And we did create, we work together obviously as a region, PIOs and other PIOs, and but we also created a low country PIO alliance, which is all PIOs and our government or local emergency communicators in the low country. And I'm talking, from Mount Pleasant, Charleston, North Charleston, Kiowa Island. I mean, all these come together, and we all have our little chat and our little, way of just kind of working off each other, and understand, all right, what's going on here? What can we expect? Hey, I need help. You know what I mean? And so there's something about collaboration, right?
You have to. You have to,
especially in these situations.
And it really helps even from the standpoint of knowing each other's skills, because then you become friends, right? You're not just someone, I know their name, I have their contact information. You become friends. And so you also know what they bring to the party when it is game day. Who's good at what?
It's that trust, right?
All right, like, oh, you're great at the writing piece of this. Like, you should do all the public releases. You're the great writer, or you're really good dealing with the media. You should be managing all the media contacts. You're the liaison from the bigger team.
Or it's just, great. A lot of people don't realize that this aspect of the role, but strategic communication, timing, how, when, all that stuff, which is a skill in itself, right?
That coordination piece is important, especially even politically, right? We're all going to hit send at the same time, right? So no one gets more credit than the other for, but it's confidence in government. There's bigger picture to all of this of how we communicate and what we're saying, and making sure that we're sharing the right information and that the timing is correct, based on the public. Okay, nobody has power. They're working on their homes. How are we going to get them information? Do we save that information until it's after supper, where they've returned somewhere where there's power now, and now they can see it? It's
but collecting that data too, those stats, right?
Understanding these things and talking with our call center and the emergency operations center to say what's the common themes of questions asked, and how do we prepare messaging differently? One of my favorite things is when the call center's bored, right? Because that means our communication plan is working very well, because the information's out there, and people don't need to call in to ask questions, because we're answering all these questions. And that's a great thing from my perspective. It's one of the things I monitor in the world of how big is big, how bad is bad. Or our phones just blowing up that aren't emergency calls anymore. It's calls with questions.
I will say this for our listeners and watchers, the folks, whether it's PIO or someone else who is communicating to y'all, whether it's social media, email alert, text message alert, I promise you, they know as much as anyone else knows. What they're telling you is the most up-to-date, accurate information. Outside that, I mean, if they are not reporting something, it's because they cannot prove it yet. You know what I mean? If I get, for example, I might get a community member or someone who says, hey, this road's flooded, impassable. they're probably right. I'll be honest with you, but I can't report that yet until I get proof that it is. So how's that? You work as a team. We get our public safety officials and y'all, and we go and establish if it's true, right? Because part of our job is factual, accurate information,
right?
And if we push out something that says, "Hey, this is flooded," but it's not flooded,
right?
Then you get what I'm saying.
Is it an inch of water, or is it 6 feet of water? It's a big difference.
Yeah, and so there's a lot to it, and so I respect what you guys do when it comes to your communication.
And that's part of the reason for having an emergency operations center. Technologies today, people say, can't you do it virtually? Kinda. Yeah, maybe. The value of an a value of emergency operations center is that immediate communication. Even when you're not involved in that particular discussion, you get to hear it. You're eavesdropping. I often hear in the emergency operations center, someone else will be like, "Oh, hang on a minute, I know something you don't know," and can feed them that little extra tidbit, which might change the operational plan. Oh, I just got off the phone with somebody. We can't get that thing you need to pull off this mission.
Yeah.
Oh, good to know. Let's change our priorities. Let's change how we're going to do it. So, and then the communication aspect of you're in there, you're hearing everything. You guys are in every leadership meeting. You're everywhere. There's no closed door to you, right? You go everywhere you need to go to get the story, to understand what's going on, and to be able to craft as part of your communications plan, how you're telling the story and how you're feeding that information to the public. That's important. And just the road closure things. I mean, oftentimes it's literally that deputy or police officer is on the phone with the police liaison in the emergency operations center, and he's got on speakerphone, and we're all sitting there waiting as he's like, "All right, I'm pulling around a corner now. Okay, yeah, I see it." Like, it's that fast that we're getting that ground truth, and that information's being shared. Or I'll get a call from our PIOs, and they'll say, "Hey, Tom, here's what I'm writing. Is this right? I'm getting ready to hit send. Just double check it for me. Is this right?" Because we may not have slept in a couple of days.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But it's that fast, and it's that the accuracy level is at that level, and we try to be as quick as we can because we want the public to have that information. And it's so important that we get that information from the public in the first place. Hey, go look here. Because we will run it down as quick as we can and vet it and put it out to the masses. And any citizen that helps us with that, you've just helped your community. Yeah. It's great.
I can say this with confidence that to our listeners and watchers, anything you receive, whether it's from the county, the town, or our partnering folks, I can only speak for us out here, that you are getting the best of the best when it comes to information. Right. Now, granted, if we accidentally spell something wrong, please don't blame us. We will get it fixed. We will edit the post. Yeah. But we are working as quick as possible. And I do not see errors like that often. No. But I have absolutely made those errors, right? Especially during storm season. Right. Shoo, you know how much communication we're doing. So maybe I misspell a street name. Maybe I misspell a street name. I promise you I'll fix it. Yeah. But bear with me. And it's the same thing with all us communicators. I can at least say that street name may be misspelled is actually flooded. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so,
and it's important for your listeners to know that, if it's big and you haven't heard about it from us, we might not know.
That's exactly it.
We might not be aware of or how big and bad someone is. You take the microburst in Somerville from last year.
That was crazy too. My goodness.
As many trees that came down, very few of them were on homes. Even fewer of them caused severe damage to a home. I think there was one home that had a tree go through it. Yeah. Right. So that was the one call that the neighborhood really didn't call 911. There was a few calls, but not many. So even as we were looking at it, we knew, a tree came down. Well, there was trees that came down these last couple of nights with storms. But how big is big? How bad is bad? It wasn't until some people got some eyes on it a little while later even. And we're like, holy cow. This
the confirmation
is bad.
Aspect of it.
And this is big. And then, send pictures. And then we see pictures. Oh my gosh, this is big. Yeah.
That was crazy. That was crazy too.
Yeah. And then, then we can get the the band together and start getting resources moving and start figuring out what we're going to do about it. But we need to know. Yeah. And you can't assume that, that we automatically know just because you're standing in your front yard looking at it.
Exactly.
You got to tell somebody.
Got to tell somebody, and you got to bear with us as we confirm this information too, because it has to be confirmed. We don't want to
cry wolf.
Yeah. If we do that, then we're just going to open a can of worms that could just be hazardous to our community and our communications, which we're not going to do. And
we know that there's a trend, whether it is people just being malicious or whether it is a foreign actor government, that there are false pictures and stories that are put on social media. They'll in an area
this building was
destroyed or here's a picture of the tornado and it was from 4 years ago in a whole other part of the country. But it's up there like the gospel, and we all start sharing it, So those are things, even we see it up there and we go, that's not right. And
we see y'all's videos and posts.
We run it down. Like, is
you
this
guys
real?
Tag us. We see it. We see that, that tree has fallen, and we're on it. We're on it to confirm it. But we are confirming it before we push it out.
Right. There's an alligator in a living room. Do we even have water in living rooms? That's my question. No, we don't have any reports of houses struck. Well, where'd this picture come from? An alligator in a living room.
And it was an AI created picture, right?
Exactly. And that stuff keeps getting better.
Yeah.
And it's significant, the amount of rumor control that you guys have to manage that isn't just kind of your normal rumor, like self-grown, local rumors that have sprouted. It's people who are trying to disrupt and to create, confusion or distrust.
Let's say non-community members.
And it really
non-community members who have
malicious intent.
Yeah, who are sitting at their keyboard somewhere. Just
it's
wanting to stir something. It's very common.
It's
every
bad.
Day, actually. Honestly,
right. Yeah.
Every day.
But it gets worse. It gets turned up when you're on national news because a disaster is striking you. Just emails. I'll get, if it's big enough, I'll get 1,000 emails because they go, ooh, here's the emergency manager. His email's on, publicly available. And I'll start getting everything from people trying to sell me stuff for a disaster.
Yeah.
To people.
Perfect timing. Yeah. Call me during a storm.
Spam stuff. Click this link. And, they're counting on the fact that I'm moving so fast through these emails that I'll accidentally click on something and corrupt the whole system. And
no, then IT will be mad.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's a real problem.
It is a real problem. Thomas, to bring this train home, I do want to discuss preparedness. We talked about this in our last episode too. Right. But when it comes to sandbag pickup, evacuation routes, different aspects of preparedness, getting a kit, what are some tips that you have for our community for preparedness? And again, reiterate the importance of following all your local officials.
Right.
Because we will help you get that stuff.
We're going to help you. So first and foremost, everyone should know whether or not they live in an evacuation zone.
Good point.
Because we do have folks here in Dorchester County that are in an evacuation zone, or you might have family or even your place of work that's outside of the county in Charleston or Berkeley counties or what have you that might be in an evacuation zone. It's important to know. The easiest way to get that information is to go to hurricane.sc. It takes you to the state's website where you can put in that address and it'll tell you exactly what zone you're in. So when the governor announces an evacuation, he announces it by zone, A, B, C, D, E, all the way up. And then at least I'm in this zone. They just called for an evacuation. What does that mean, right? That means that we are asking you to leave. That's what it means. It doesn't mean some of your family leaves. It means you all leave. And people should really take note that is not a decision that's made lightly at all. We know how
people
much
think it is.
We know how much how many problems it causes, and it's hard. And it's just hard for people to leave their homes, right? And go somewhere else. But I don't want to have to open shelters. That's a lot of work, right? I don't want to manage a giant evacuation. That's a lot of work.
But when you have to.
But when we have to, we've thought of everything else So by the time, and the governor doesn't make that decision alone, he's talking with us. He's talking with state DOT and law enforcement and fire,
A whole group,
everybody,
big group
right?
of people. Yeah.
It's a lot of folks that are weighing in before he makes the final decision on it. And he keeps that decision himself, partly to help protect us. That way, if people want to be mad, they can be mad at him. But he's not making that decision on his own. He's getting a lot of input about everything that's expected to happen. And then, so if evacuations are called, we're opening shelters, and those shelter locations will be announced as to where you can go, address, and what type of services are there, what to bring, if you're going, what you can't bring.
Yeah.
We have, pet friendly shelters, so you can bring your pets with you. We don't want anybody to have to abandon their pet. There's resources available even for livestock. There's people who will help, and we can help coordinate those pieces as well. Now, for an individual family, every family should have an emergency kit. And what's in your emergency kit? We say 72 hours worth of food and water. And I tell people, think of, grandma or great grandma's pantry, right? Or she's got all the canned goods all stocked up, but we tend not to live like that anymore. We tend to most Americans go to the grocery store every 3 days. And you don't have a lot of stuff just stocked in your pantries anymore. But I tell people, it's disaster rations. You don't have to buy the fancy kits. It can just be canned ravioli. Can you eat canned ravioli cold?
No filet.
Yes, you can. Right.
Not going to be cooking a filet, right?
It's just to keep you alive, right?
Yeah. SpaghettiOs.
Right. And then every now and then you buy a new can of SpaghettiOs, and the old one is lunch.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
right.
it just keeps the stock moving, right? But it gives you a little bit in your pantry, and we tell people, put it in a tote. That way you can take it with you. If you're going to evacuate, just pick up the tote.
Very quick.
Walk out the door. So then you're not trying to think of it. I grew up on an island in the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, and we had to evacuate when I was a little kid one time for a hurricane, and it was so upsetting to my mother of all the things, like even as we're leaving, the panic of, oh my gosh, photo albums.
That's the one thing,
right.
Photo albums.
So then we ended up, all photo albums lived in a duffel bag in the closet. You took a photo album out, looked at it, you put the photo album back in the duffel bag.
It's a little different nowadays.
Right.
A lot of people have stuff on their phones, but I know my mom still has her little totes of photos. Yeah.
That way, if we had to run, she could grab the photo albums. I tell people now, put all those things on thumb drives. Take the time, scan those pictures, put them on a thumb drive. And same with your important documents, your important bank account information, important phone numbers, allergies, medicines. Put it all on the thumb drive. Keep one for yourself. Give one to a very trusted family member or friend to keep at their house. And that isn't here. Yeah. That way, if all your possessions are gone in the world and you're standing in your front yard in your pajamas, you just need to know one phone number to get that thumb drive back and start putting your life back together again. And to have those precious keepsakes and, important documents and, wedding certificates and everything else, insurance policies, all that sort of stuff. That's one of the greatest tips I ever heard. And that's one of the ones I try to share all the time with people. Because if nothing else, the comfort that will bring you of being prepared. And that's one of the things as storms roll in, our caveman brain takes over a little bit, and we want to nest, right? It's gather the food, prepare for the storm, hide in the cave, right? Yeah. And the best way to help take away some of that anxiety is to feel like you're prepared. So having that kit that's pre-built, you're just adding in the last few things. You have a communications plan. Everybody knows if the phone lines are all jammed here, sometimes you can't make a local call, but you can make an out-of-state call because it's different lines, right? Well, Uncle Joe, who lives in Utah, is now the family hub, right? Because everybody can get in touch with Uncle Joe, but you can't call each other down the street.
But tell Uncle Joe
he's the hub.
what he should be watching too,
right?
Where he should be getting that information, right? Because maybe you can call, but maybe you can't go on social media, or maybe you're not getting emails,
no TV and stuff, right? But they will have our information on CNN, on the national networks, national nightly news. We'll talk about our stuff, curfew, this, that, town meeting. And that's a great way to share that information. Another great tip obviously we can't forget our pets, right? Have a preparedness for your pet. But also your children in the sense of occupying their time when the power's out, right? You got the flashlights going, you got maybe a hurricane oil lamp running. Now what are you going to do? You have a elementary school age child who's bored to tears because now their devices don't work. I have a 9-year-old. He'll lose his mind in about 6 minutes. Of boredom. But I tell people, put a brand new, never been played board game in there, and it's family board game night. Just to occupy, but it's never been played, so it's new, it's fresh, it's fun. Little things like that they might enjoy. And then also if you have to evacuate, as you're grabbing your stuff to go, what stuffed animal or what blanket or what, that travel video game device, bring the power cords for it. If wherever you go, if you go to a shelter, you'll have power. That way we can help to occupy the family and bring the stress levels lower. But we really want to make sure that people understand what it is their family needs if not even where it's a known event like a hurricane's coming, but a no notice event like an earthquake, that you can respond very quickly with what your family needs, survive on your own for a few days until the greater help can arrive, and that you're getting information from trusted sources, and then you're helping your neighbors who may not be in the same position you are. That's how a community survives the first few days of a disaster. And it helps speed up the recovery process, the long-term recovery process, because we can focus our efforts on the areas of the region that are truly impacted by it. And, others are okay on their own. Yeah,
that makes sense. I think that's very good information. And again, we'll go ahead and make it in the bio. I'll add some of y'all's links that y'all push for. Don't you have a preparedness guide?
So the hurricane preparedness guide comes from the state.
It's a state. So we'll add that.
We'll have that link in there.
And I know we use that as well. But yeah, use that. I think there's a checklist in there or something.
There's all kinds of fantastic information.
A lot of good stuff in there. The one thing, I was going to wrap it up with one more question, but I have another question before that last question, is after evacuation, a lot of folks storm came through. A lot of folks want to rush and get back home.
Right.
And we have that problem, and we see it. People driving through, they end up getting stuck, or they stranded, or getting in the way of recovery efforts. Right. What can you say on that, and what advice do you have for our listeners and watchers on that?
Well, first and foremost, I'm in a foot race in a post-storm environment to get people home. If your home still exists and it's habitable, even if it doesn't have power, if it's habitable and I can get you there, I want to get you there. I want to close shelters. I want to get people back to where they need to be. I want to give the public, you were good enough to follow our instructions to evacuate. I should be very cognizant of that and try to get you home as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. And know that we're working on that, right? And know that we're going to try to communicate as best we can, especially even route selection and all that kind of stuff. Because you may not be able to get there your normal way, whether it's flooding or trees are down or what have you. And to communicate just that, hey, it's impassable. If you're trying to get here, you can't get there, at least for another day or so. Your house might be fine, but I can't get you there.
Yeah.
We're working on it. And a little patience and a little grace goes a long way in that world. The other thing is sightseeing. We cannot have the roads congested with people coming to sightsee the damage that they just heard about in the neighborhood adjacent to theirs. One, you get in the way. Two, it's a dangerous situation. A lot of times in a post-disaster world, as many people die in car wrecks as die in the storm itself, because the power's out, the intersections aren't working, there's new sinkholes, there's all kinds of stuff, and people, you're driving around kind of in shock at what you're seeing, and you're really not paying attention to the road, and accidents happen, and people are flying. They're blowing. They think no stoplight means no speed limit, and they're blowing through these intersections at way over the speed limit, and it's killing people. And that's really important to give us some time to assess situation, and if we need to get law enforcement at different intersections, we can, but that takes time. Because at the first they're making rescues. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They don't have time to direct traffic. So stay off the roads, and that's a real problem. Plus, if you yourself are a victim, the last thing you want is the greater community driving by your house, staring at you
with their phones out,
taking pictures of your house, what's left of it, your family, and it's just not right. Right?
Some common decency.
Stay away.
Yeah.
Let the experts come in and do some work. Let the family start to manage their own disaster, if you will, and give them some grace as well.
Let them digest what has happened to them, and without the world having to see that stuff.
Right. And that's also why we try to put pictures out there, and we're very thoughtful, of what is actually posted. Of the 100 pictures we might take at a scene, 1 or 2 is actually worthy of sharing publicly, because
we'll post pictures so you understand,
so you can see it,
the type of damage that's here. Like, it's just, we're going to be thoughtful. We're not going to show anything that's
right. We don't want to show people's faces and license plates, and we try to be really good about that. And that's important to give us that chance to do the work we need to do, and to be gracious to your neighbors.
For sure. All right. Well, one question, then we'll bring this guy home. Now, emergency management, you guys have anything fun planned, anything new planned? What's the future look like for emergency management? Is it just continuing to expand and innovate? What does it kind of look like?
So right now, there's a challenge in emergency management with all that's going on at the federal level, and FEMA just yesterday, the president announced that following hurricane season, FEMA will be dismantled, as has been already said. But timeline wise, it'll begin at the end of hurricane season, which is November 30th, officially ends hurricane season. And then what does that look like? We don't know. He hinted in the interview about there being a office within the White House that is kind of the new FEMA under a different name. And then I'm sure other pieces of it that need to continue to exist will be parceled out to other agencies. A lot of other agencies do disaster work. FEMA coordinates it. But it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what happens with recovery funding, and how that works at the federal level. There's talk that it will be parceled out through Congress as block grants for recovery. But that's not set in stone yet, as well as just our preparedness grants. There's a lot of different types of preparedness grants and mitigation grants that come through the federal government that we don't know if it will exist in the future. It's existing this budget cycle with some changes, but we don't know what that means in the future. So the impacts will be substantial at the state and local level. But we just don't know what that looks like yet. And, we're emergency managers. We will plan our way through it, right?
Yeah.
We will come out on the other side.
You're used to the chaos.
That's right. It's where we live, right? So we're not fearful of it. It's just we need the information so we can plan around it.
You're thoughtful of it.
You're very thoughtful.
You're understanding of,
I briefed county council last week about it, and we had a thoughtful conversation in council about this is coming, and what do we need to start thinking about in order to prepare ourselves to continue the mission of emergency management in disaster, and effectively assist our citizens who are impacted. So we can't sit idly by and be like, oh, well, they got rid of FEMA. Now we don't do that anymore. We still have to do it. It's just the responsibility is more focused on the state as far as managing recovery and paying for recovery than has been in the past.
There'll be a change.
And then we got to adjust here at the local level, which we'll do. probably better than most jurisdictions around the nation.
Yeah.
This is a low country in the Tri-County region. We're really good at emergency management, and we'll muddle our way through it.
For sure.
But that's the big thing in emergency management right now. So new innovations don't excite me nearly as much as what's happening with FEMA and the downstream effects that it's bringing.
Well, at least you're thoughtful on it and understanding and working through it and preparing. And that's all you can do.
That is what we do.
Yeah. Well, Thomas, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was an incredible conversation. I think we went into different aspects we didn't do the first time. So I do really feel like we've had a really unique conversation, which I appreciate. I do always want to bring you on every year before hurricane season really ramps up to see what's new, what to expect and stuff like that. So, but we'll obviously be working together. Usually when it's low, we don't work together much.
That's right.
But when the season comes in, we start talking a little bit more. But for our listeners and watchers, please go follow their social media. Their different avenues of communication. They do great work. Him and his team are awesome, and it's funny if it's a sunny day and they still got some good posts out there that's worth just some time to enjoy, and relax. But Thomas,
we have fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Happy to talk.
Thank you.